And you're still watching a live coverage of the probing into allegations made by the minority about the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. You heard earlier that Haruna was on the floor laying the issues line by line. And you also heard earlier Okudzeto Ablakwa raising issues with the conduct of Gabi Otri-Darko, who is representing the Finance Minister, which he described as condescending. But his colleague Egyapa Mensah took it unkindly. You also heard Ato Forson relying on the Fiscal Responsibility Act to make his argument that our debt is unsustainable. He relied on the same act. He says primary balance, for instance, must always be balanced, a breach of which can lead to a motion of censure, as the minority has done. Let's take you back to the conference center where there's a created parliament where this whole activity is happening.
Okay. So Mr. Yes. Chairman, to conclude on my first point, my matter is that our minister responsible for finance misled Parliament.
Wait a minute. Which one is this? You are concluding on which one?
On item 4.
I thought you completed it. That is why
they were asking questions, so I had to.
No, 4, 5, 6. I think Sami has got some questions for you.
Okay. I just wanted to make my opening, my closing mark on that one. So if he has a point, he can.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. The publication that the Honorable Egyapa Mensah referred to, I have an extract here, still on the website of Ghana Web, dated 9th May 2020. The interview of Dr. Albert Tuna Mama to the Joy FM program News File. For our record, Chairman, the report states, under fiscal deficit, the IMF country director said the IMF and the government of Ghana have different views on the calculation of fiscal deficit, and they have agreed to disagree on it. He said while the IMF calculates fiscal deficit with the financial sector costs and energy sector costs, the government argues strongly that the fiscal deficit ought to be calculated without the financial sector costs and energy sector costs. The IMF country director therefore revealed that the 7.5 fiscal deficit for 2019 in their statement included the financial sector payments and energy sector payments, while the 4.5 in the 2019 budget does not include the financial sector and energy sector payments. The comparison that I see is comparing two different things on one side, and we are aware of the differences, he said in the interview. So I just want to place on record that it is erroneous for the impression to be created that the IMF country director has discounted or dispelled the very eloquent and forceful submission of the ranking member of the Finance Committee.
But actually, you put it quite well. Yes. What seems to, for those of us listening, is that it's a divergence of views. The IMF appears to have looked at it from a different spectacle, and then the Ghana team appears to have looked at it from a different telescope. So it's a different interpretation altogether. So we would not
yes.
On that.
You know, the Honorable Egyapa Mensah earlier has sought to create the impression that these matters have been dispelled. So I just thought, for the record, this is a House of Records. Yeah, I have another question. Can the Honorable Ranking Member confirm that these figures you have provided here today are exactly what was contained in the Finance Minister's application to the IMF for the $1 billion IMF COVID-19 relief fund, when they wanted $1 billion from the IMF? Which figures did they use?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, when the minister responsible for finance approached the IMF for $1 billion rapid credit facility, they used the data that converged with IMF numbers. Clearly, they did not use the data that they presented to Parliament.
You see the unfairness to the committee. I mean, the two of you are talking about data that you know about. Could you confirm that what is sent to this one is this one? Yes,
Mr.
I can confirm
Mr.
that.
Chairman,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, to start with, I'll go back to the numbers. The data that they sent to IMF was that in the year 2018, Ghana's fiscal deficit was 7.1% of GDP.
I take to mean the Ministry of
The Ministry of Finance. It's an institution, the Ministry of Finance. Then in the year 2019,
in 2019 budget, instead of the 7.1, authoritatively the minister reported 3.7% for the record.
Even though they had informed IMF that in the year 2018 the fiscal deficit was 7.1% of GDP, they told Parliament that the fiscal deficit was 3.9% of GDP.
I also take it that when you say that they informed them, they would have informed them. Yeah, Minister of Finance would have informed IMF by way of certain documentation.
By way of documentation, the documentation is what I presented to you.
Which is
the rapid credit facility document. Can I have it?
So when your Minister of Finance is writing to them, they write under.
No, because under the document they show the source and they say that the source is coming from the authority, Government of Ghana Authority. So, and you will see it in page 3 of the document. So the question here is, the Minister of Finance misled Parliament, obviously by presenting different set of data to IMF and different set of data to the Republic of Ghana.
Okay,
and that is why we are saying
that is well taken. Can we have your next question?
Yeah, my final question on this ground 4 relates to the matter I raised. As ranking member on the Committee of Finance, has your committee inquired from the Finance Minister why on this particular matter he presented different sets of figures, one to the Parliament of Ghana and a different one to the IMF when they needed $1 billion desperately?
Yes, we have. I mean, several occasions we've raised these issues. I had particularly raised it as ranking member with my colleague deputy ranking and other members of the committee. It is for that reason why the Ministry of Finance, led by the minister, had agreed that going forward in the year 2022, they would treat all these expenditures above the line. And that is why you will notice in the 2022 budget that all these expenditures all of a sudden has been treated differently. In the past, they used to treat it as if it is not expenditure, but today they are treating it separately. So they have accepted that going forward, this is not the way to report it. And this means that all these years, they have breached the fiscal responsibility rules. Meanwhile, they were covering it underground.
Okay. Honorable members, any other questions? Honorable Patrick Boama.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, on ground 4, Honorable Ranking Member, your ground 4 starts with the word deliberate and dishonest. But from what you've done so far and from what you've presented to us, you haven't been able to lead any evidence to support the fact that there was this dishonest misreporting by the minister.
So you are agreeing that there is misreporting, but you think it's not deliberate. Is that what you're trying to say, Sergeant?
You see the unfairness in the question. See, we here are not.
No, I didn't get him well, so I needed to get clarity in the question. So
no. What he said was that he looked at what you put out there. You're talking about dishonesty and all of that. So he said, at the end of the day, from what you presented, there doesn't seem to be any unfairness.
No, because Honorable Haruna, let me finish with this, please. The key question is, there is a Fiscal Responsibility Act, and the Act in Section 2 is clear that when a minister...
Mr. Co-Chairman, I'm prepared to make progress. That's your view.
And when
the finance minister will be here to tell us whether it is dishonest or whatever.
If I may land, there is a Fiscal Responsibility Act, and there's a set of rules that says that the overall fiscal deficit should not exceed 5%, Section 2. And the primary balance must always be positive. And it goes on in section 4 saying that if a minister exceeds it by 1%,
I may have exceeded it mistakenly.
But the argument is,
that doesn't make it.
But the argument is
dishonest. That's the point
argument
that he was
is
making.
Knowing very well that you have exceeded it, instead of reporting the right numbers, the minister dishonestly decided to treat certain expenditures below the line, obviously to evade the fiscal responsibility act.
You are adding even more to it, evade and all of that.
No,
Let's leave it at that.
not to go through censorship.
You got another question? Yes, okay. Okay.
Still on Patrick. Patrick, yes, those words, you may disagree with the word deliberate and dishonest. Without wanting you to answer, between the Parliament of Ghana and the IMF, to whom does the minister owe an obligation of reporting accurately on the management of our public resources? We simply are saying that in a subsequent letter, you agreed to a deficit of 7.1% to the IMF, when in fact you reported 3.7% to the Ghanaian Parliament. If I had used the word false reporting, probably that would even be stronger. So we are just talking about inaccurate reporting. And for me, the significant thing the Honorable Ablakwa and Atu have done, responding to Honorable Mensah, is to appreciate that, yes, there was disagreement between methodology, but the same minister conceded to international best practice in his subsequent actions. So that gives him out when in 2018 and 2019 he did not yield to the international best practice. So for a record,
that doesn't make it dishonest.
Mr. Chairman, I disagree strongly on that.
You mean that message?
Yes, because you see, if report,
beginning to pass judgment.
well, I mean, we will evaluate the evidence, and I want us to cross that bridge when we get there. But what is going around the table suggests that we need to clarify for purposes of the Ghanaian people. So, if a minister knew, or ought reasonably to have known, that below the line reporting will understate the deficit, and still went ahead and they did below the line reporting, understating the deficit to Parliament, that is dishonesty. There can be nothing more dishonest than that.
Mr.
And
Chairman.
so I didn't want us to be passing judgment around the table, you know, but of course, that is what is taking place. Honorable members.
Mr. Chairman, may I? Yeah.
Honorable Counsel.
With all due respect, I think it's a bit too early.
Yes.
To hear pronouncements.
We have resolved the council.
So Council, you are comfortable when the pronouncements and the insinuations are coming from the side that supports the
But you are not supposed to take
they are
sides.
not prejudicial.
But you are not supposed to take sides on these matters.
Please.
Respectfully.
Let's be forthright with ourselves. Let's be forthright with ourselves.
No. Council, I think we resolved it. We resolved it. So yeah, we leave it.
Chairman, let me just post this because you are a committee of record. Take, for instance, a contingent liability of Sino-Hydro of 648 million.
This is dealing with what? What are we dealing with?
We are still dealing with data.
Data in respect of?
Ground 4. Now you report to the Parliament of Ghana that Sino-Hydro is better, and that you pay for that loan of over $600 million with bauxite. Probably next year, realism will catch up with the minister and government that your bauxite is still unprocessed. Your creditor wants his money for the $600 million. It will come to hit the public purse, and the public will be made to pay. That is why you must accept that when you come to Parliament, and for me, we stated it even in the debate, There are times that we are disappointed in ourselves and in the institution of Parliament. If Parliament approve a loan of 1 billion or 600 million in the name of butter, and in 2023 you don't have tomatoes in exchange for pepper, Parliament must accept that it is not holding and protecting the public trust well. So we've given you an example of contingent liability where you stated to the people's representative that on this matter, butter, exchange of goods for goods. Tomorrow, when the public is paying with hard-earned forex, you will appreciate what that means.
Harold, all of this is pretty easy ex post facto, isn't it? Yeah.
No. Okay, please go on. Honorable Patrick Boma.
Thank you. Chairman, for the record, the 2018 budget was presented in November 2017, for the record. The 2019 budget was presented in November 2018, at the time that the legislation that my good friend is citing had not come into force. So it's an inappropriate legislation that he's seeking to rely on to establish that the minister was dishonest.
Well, I'm sure the lawyers for the minister will address us on that point. So
in fact, let's
not debate it around the table.
Honorable Atuforsen, he read into your record the day the president assented to the bill as a
very well. Yes.
He did.
Yes.
He did. No, he himself said December. I said he said it. So it is not for Patrick to tell him what is appropriate. He did so. He said 3 months. Go back to your record. When he was talking, I listened. He said 3 months
3 days.
later.
Yes, I said.
And he read.
The date of assent is 28th of December 2018, and I said that was the day His Excellency the President assented to the bill.
Go on with your
okay, and I talked about the fact that 3 days after 2018 he breached it, and 2019 is where I'm even dwelling. 2019 he breached it completely, and the rules were suspended in the year 2020, not 2019.
Very well. The Honorable Boma, you are done.
No,
Honorable Senator Rollins.
Suspended in 2020.
Please. Order, honorable members.
Thank you, Coach. My question is back to this table with regards to the fiscal deficit. Was there any communication subsequently from the minister to the House, given the difference in the figures that he presented to Parliament versus the figures presented to the IMF with regards to the same budgets?
There hasn't been the statement from the minister himself to Parliament. What we have done over the years is that we've always raised it on the floor during the parliamentary debates. Ministers and members of Parliament have got an opportunity to speak to the fact. It is only until the year 2022, when the 2022 budget was read and changes were made, when the minister, as part of his statement, when he was winding up, made statement that suggests that he has changed from the previous reporting to a current reporting when I raised the issue.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
And given the reference document, was a reason given at that point for why that change in reporting had occurred from the previous budget to this current one?
All what they said is that they've listened to us and they are changing the methodology.
Very well. Honorable Senator Rollins.
All that they said,
they have listened to us and they've changed the methodology.
Who is the all?
At the committee when the issue was raised. That's why the change in the methodology from below the line accounting to above the line accounting. They said they have listened and they have changed it.
Honorable members, any more issues relating to item 4? Okay. Honorable Ejapames.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to find out from Honorable Atuforsen whether he's aware that IMF ordinarily will sanction countries that misreport to them. Whether he's aware.
Mr. Chairman, it depends on the level of misreporting and whether you are in a program or you are not under a program. So if under Article 4 they will not sanction you, they will not sanction you. If it has to do with the under a program and there is some prior actions you have to do it, or there's something you have to do, you don't do it.
Even if you are dishonest, they won't sanction you.
Under Article 4, no.
I see.
In any event, the period that we are talking about, Ghana was under a program. I want to find out from him whether he is aware in 2018 and 2019, Ghana was under an IMF program. Fact.
Mr. Chairman,
I want to find out from him whether he is aware that Ghana, between the period 2017 and 2022, has been sanctioned by the IMF.
Mr. Chairman, Ghana left the IMF program in the year 2019. The reporting, as I'm talking about, at the time, end of year 2019, Ghana was not in an IMF program. And so this cannot warrant a sanction from the IMF.
Very well.
Chairman, just on sanctions, and Chairman, we are talking about protecting public resources of Ghana and ensuring that we work in a manner which reflects the public interest. What the Minister of Finance have succeeded in doing is to take Ghana into a debt-distressed country with unsustainable debt. Now, the IMF board will indicate to you that where your debt is unsustainable, I'm coming to sanctions regime, where your debt is unsustainable, you are not likely to get board approval. And it affects the quantum of resources you are asking for from the IMF. You want 3 billion, they will look at your debt. And if it is not sustainable, so Mesa, the sanctions may not necessarily be we have punished you. A denial, where we are today as a country, if we do fail in getting an IM intervention, that will be fatal to the future of this country.
That will be the results of what Ato is talking about, the 2018, 2017.
No, we are just saying that sanctions is not like a carrot and stick hypothesis where you are given a carrot. We are saying that the stick may manifest in a board taking a stronger position against Ghana, because these figures will ultimately affect our debt threshold and how they relate to us under a FAN program. Thank you.
What is the point?
Chairman, I, with all due respect to the minority leader, this statement is purely speculative. My statement or question was to the effect to the accusation of misreporting by the government of Ghana under the stewardship of the finance minister. And I wanted to find out from the proponent whether Ghana had been sanctioned for misreporting.
Yeah, then
his answer was categorical.
No.
No.
Yeah, sure. So,
thank you.
Any question?
No, I'm fine.
Thank you.
Okay, Chairman, even though no sanctions, at least it compelled corrective behavior by the Minister of Finance.
Minority leader at this table, the bosses are not you. The bosses are the two of us here. You know, so let's wait when we get to the floor.
Mr. Chairman, our grounds says...
No, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Honorable are here for.
Yeah, check the stuff for us. We have the technicians here.
Yes, Chairman, thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask just a question for clarification. Honorable Ato, in your presentation, you alluded to Section 2 and Section 4 of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. And you stated clearly that a breach of Section 2 is a ground based on which Parliament may pass a vote of censure on the minister. I want to ask you whether sanction or no sanction by the IMF, Parliament under Section 4, based on the breach, can proceed to censure the minister responsible.
Parliament of Ghana does not report to IMF. Parliament of Ghana obviously relies on the laws of Ghana. We passed this law. The law mandates us that if the minister breaches rules, he has to be censured. And I'm going in line with what is before us. Act 982 is clear that when the minister breaches Section 2, more than 1 percentage point he may be censured, and that is the basis of our grounds.
Okay, thank you. The Honorable Atuforsen, you may now move to ground 5.
Just one innocuous question to Honorable on whether the GFS manual you spoke about, whether there are any items that will have to be reported either below the line or above the line. Is there anything like that?
So
it's just a simple question.
If you look at the GFS manual under paragraph 4.53, you can see below the line the definition is there, and above the line definition is there.
And by the way, what is GFS?
Government Finance Statistics 2014. That is the global manual that countries use in fiscal.
Very well. Yeah. Now, can you now move to item 5?
Mr. Chairman, item 5. Our grounds is that there has been fiscal recklessness leading to the crash of the Ghana cedi, which is currently the worst performing currency in the world. Mr. Chairman, the reason why our currency is depreciating at such a rapid rate has to do with the debt overhang, to the levels that our debt has now become unsustainable, and investors are panicking, smelling the possibility of debt default, obviously because of how the fiscal has been managed over the years. Mr. Chairman, clearly, from the slide that I show you, we are seeing that Ghana's fiscal part since 2018 is the worst among 46 sub-Saharan African countries. So if you are to compare the fiscal part of Ghana in the last 4 years, we happen to be the worst in the entire sub-Saharan African region, 46 countries if you compare it. And I'll show you what has happened to our fiscal since 2017. I'm on record to have commended the Minister of Finance publicly in Parliament, and Hansard bears me out, that in the year 2017, they did so well on the fiscal by staying true to the fiscal consolidation. But you see, they lost the way from the year 2018, when this below the line and above the line started. At that point, Ghanaians and major stakeholders felt that, honestly, Ghana economy is doing well, whilst in actual fact, we're not doing well. Because people often look at the fiscal deficit as the fiscal part, and draw conclusions that they are adding to the debt based on the fiscal part. But unfortunately, because the overall balance was understated, people were not paying attention, and others are asking ourselves, how did we get here? And I've always said that we got here because the fiscal has been understated over the years, and that is why we're not paying attention. And you could see that from 2018 that we did of over 7%, 2019 over 7%, 2020 during COVID we did 17.2% of GDP, the highest in the sub-region, and then apart from Seychelles that did 18%. Almost every other person, every other country, we spent far more than them. So, Mr. Chairman, let me take you to what countries did, and this is the 46 African countries that have gone through.
Before you do, I'm looking at the 5 again. I would have thought that your emphasis was on the crash of the Ghana cedi. Is that it? Look at the 5.
I am making a point. Can I first of all talk of the fiscal recklessness
leading to
the crash? So I have to make the point on the fiscal recklessness as the reason why there was a crash. So, for example, I've listed here the 46 African countries, and you will notice that Ghana has run fiscal deficit in excess of 50% over 4 years. Over 4 years since 2017. In fact, 2017 we did well. So since 2018. So 2018, Mr. Chairman, you notice that Ghana happened to our fiscal deficit was higher than most countries. 2018, 2019, 2020. in the year 2020, and this data is coming from World Bank. This data is coming from World Bank. I take it from the website of the World Bank. World Bank, yes, from the website of the World Bank. The African report from the World Bank website. So in the year 2020, you could see that apart from Seychelles, almost every country, in fact, in the sub-region, no country did fiscal deficit above 7%. In the entire Africa, Ghana was the second highest, apart from Seychelles. Seychelles did 18% of GDP in fiscal deficit. By the previous year, their fiscal deficit was 0.9% of GDP. And then the year before, in the year 2018, their fiscal deficit was 0.2% of GDP. However, in the year after, the year 2021,
attempting to disrupt your train of thought. Keep focus, please. I don't want to, even though I've said that I'll be happy if you are derailed, but keep focus. When you talk about the physicals and the physical deficit and all of that, let me understand my elementary conception of these matters. This result from what? Expenditure?
It's high expenditure.
High expenditure.
High expenditure.
To do the roads, to do the water, the railways.
Whatever the expenditure is.
What's the name again? The flyover over there. What is the name? Remind me, those who know the flyover.
Honorable Katie. Honorable Katie.
No, let me understand. Is that
this
what
is
we're
macro.
talking about?
I'm talking of high-level expenditure numbers. If you spend more than your means, you crash.
But it's for those things, is that it?
I don't know what it is for, but I'm giving you the headline, the expenditure levels. I don't know what it is for.
Okay.
So,
Chair, I thought,
Chairman.
Chair, I thought when you were outlining the list, you had the National Cathedral, the SDI Secretariat, NAPCO Secretariat, the bloated government, and then corruption. It's all part of it. The Auditor General's report. So it's a tall list.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, first, I'm dealing with high-level macro numbers and what this means to every economy. And if your fiscal part is not sustainable, you eventually find yourself in a debt trap. Unfortunately, Ghana's problem today is debt trap. We have confronted ourselves with unsustainable debt due to the fiscal part we have created since 2018. And that is what I'm trying to explain. Mr. Chairman, every single country in the list that I've provided, 46 sub-Saharan African countries, if you look at the part, Ghana is the worst. In the year 2018, in the year 2020 in particular, when Ghana had to see an election and obviously also confront with COVID, we overspent our budget in excess of 17% of GDP. One would have thought that as soon as you find yourself in such a situation, you will decline. In terms of subsequent year, you have to do fiscal consolidation to catch up. Unfortunately, in the year 2021, instead of us to go through fiscal consolidation, we saw a government that still wants to continue with the path of fiscal recklessness, fiscal populism, by creating additional expenditure. And you can see that Seychelles, that actually saw a fiscal deficit of very 18%. The subsequent year, they reduced their deficit by 7 percentage points.
Put it on there. Everybody is listening. The whole of Ghana is listening. Why not put it in the layman's term? Because even some of us are struggling. So why not put it in layman's term? Listen, instead of the government cutting down on the development of infrastructure, the government still insists on building roads, building this, doing this.
Don't worry. Instead of government cutting down on frivolous expenditures such as National Cathedral and the size of government, they decided to go on
the luxury
overdrive.
charter jet travels. There is a chairman inviting us to provide a list of the reckless expenditure.
I'm not listening to my co-chair on this. He's trying to advise me on the point I'm not taking. But 1 second, it's okay. He's a co-chair. He can always come in. In the scheme of things, I don't know much about the cathedral, but in the scheme of things, I don't think when you talk about big items that you are talking about, you are trivializing your own argument, because I think in the scheme of things, this doesn't. But anyway, the point I make is that
you're talking about worth $400 million.
The government
Chairman, for the record.
On the provisions that I've identified. Put it that way so the ordinary Ghanaian understands what we are talking about.
So, Katie, I think I've made my point. We happen to be the worst among 46 countries in the sub-region in terms of the fiscal part in the last 4 years.
If there are no questions, we can go to the sixth.
That is the reason why we are where we are.
Oh, okay, that's good. So this is fairly short. If there are no questions, are there questions? Yeah, Doc.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. I think just following your train of thought, would it be possible for the committee to be provided with any documents regarding certain expenditure that you're referring to? You've made reference to the cathedral. You made reference to a few other. Yes.
My colleague, the Honourable Okujeto, is the MP for the cathedral, and I'm sure he will do justice on that.
Oh, Chairman, the Honourable Ranking Member has reduced my stature. I want him to add chartered jets as well, not only National Cathedral, but chartered luxury jet travels. It's also my area of expertise.
So I'm sure the good people of Northton will
Honorable Samuel Kujeto, I think that you are disrupting the flow of evidence to the committee. Honorable Zenator.
Yes, so Chairman, before he continues to the sixth, just for the record of this committee, the Honorable Atuforsen is leading evidence that there is a strong nexus between your fiscal policy, your monetary policy, and the strength of your currency. And that if you do not manage your fiscal well, as is not been managed well by the Minister for Finance, that's why interest rate is going high, and that is why the depreciation of the cedi is going high. So for the record, we are saying that fiscal irresponsibility, unjustified license of government and its associated expenditure have contributed to these fiscal slippages, which is affecting the performance of the economy. Thank you, Chair.
Well, no, Co-Chair, 1 second. Aaron, we heard all of that. What we didn't hear, though, was any reference to the COVID and to the crash in the international world. We didn't hear about the rise of the dollar. We didn't hear anything about of that nature. Who wouldn't allow you? You have the whole time.
You have been interjecting me every second.
To make sure that you have a free flow. What's your problem? You have all the time. If you want to start again, I asked you specifically, are you done with the 5? You said yes.
No, because you keep interjecting me.
Since when did you become kind of anxious about me?
I know because you are.
Yeah, so Uncle talks, you shut up, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, so
yeah. Honorable Katie.
Honorable members. Is your question answered? The Honorable Dr. Zenator Rawlings.
I just wanted confirmation of the fact that he can furnish the committee with the relevant documents to buttress his point on the issue of financial recklessness.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Co-Chair made reference to. I'm not done.
Yeah. I thought she had finished. Yeah.
And the co-chair made reference to infrastructure and mentioned roads and hospitals, and which is. Was it off record?
I wasn't off record. No.
Yes. Yeah. All I'm trying to do is to have some clarity on specifically what he's referring to, because we need more specifics to be able to make an informed decision and report back to the plenary.
Okay, Honorable Animadu.
No, but now back to council, because I thought he had some objection or something from council.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think this is the very issue that I was referring to. We are now being invited to ask the proponents to provide more documents. Right. And I think we need to be extremely careful about this. That's all. Thanks.
We will define the nature of the document that we're asking for. We'll try and define it.
As they make reference to documents and tender them, we'll make sure that mandatorily they will be made available to you. I took note of a World Bank report, Africa report, which is not, on the list here. So you do well to tender that document to the committee. Yes, Honorable Animadu, and then Honorable Aniefo.
I may associate myself with the question that Dr. Zenator asked, and I would want to draw the proponent's attention to how paragraph 5 is couched. Fiscal recklessness leading to the crash of the cedi. And I would want to support what she had requested for, that if you can get a detailed expenditure which would lead or point to the committee that the ministry was reckless? Thank you.
Very well, Honorable Atufosin.
Chairman, you know, before Atufosin came, you know, this morning when I arrived, Chairman, I shared a proverb with you and Honorable Anyimedu. I said, if you are pounding fufu for a blind man, the best way to assure the blind man that you are not eating the fufu is to be whistling. You have to be whistling whilst you are pounding. Is the city crash or not crash? We have done our whistling.
Mr. Chairman, he's overruled. Who are the
Yes, so yes, they will provide the documents, the figures, the specific expenditure.
Yes. Honorable.
The specific expenses.
I think
for instance, the Honorable Minority Leader earlier on tendered a warrant in respect of the cathedral. That's an expense.
Yes.
And that is part of what build up to the expenditure that you are referring to, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. So that is the nature of the evidence that would want you to tender before the committee.
Mr. Chairman, when you say fiscal recklessness, I mean, it looks as if members are trivializing the issue to just expenditure. Mr. Chairman, fiscal management is a combination of revenue, expenditure, non-tax revenue, and financing. So it's not
I prefer that we are mindful of our diction. When you say that we're trivializing...
No, because we are... Okay, I withdraw that. I withdraw that, Uncle. I withdraw that. But we don't need to just concentrate on one leg of fiscal management. My point is that when you run fiscal deficit 4 years in a row, amounting to 56% of your GDP, higher than sub-Saharan African average. In fact, no country among the 46 African countries has to run that kind of large fiscal deficit. In quote, you have increased your debt by that magnitude.
You made a point.
So therefore, you don't overspend above your means. If you're a young person, you start life and you don't have money and overspend above your means. That's recklessness.
If there are no questions.
Yeah, co-chairs, thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. By ground 5, it is categorically stated that Ghana cedi has crashed as a result of recklessness and is the worst performing currency in the world. You have been a deputy finance minister. During your tenure of office in 2016, with particular reference to the exchange rate, cedi to dollar, how much was the rate? And now, what is the exchange rate?
Okay. Thank you very much. The Ghana cedi at the time we were leaving office in 2018 at the central bank was 3.9 to 1 cedi in 2016. In the market is 4.1, some places 4.2. Today, and this is public knowledge, you can get it from the internet interbank. Today, in the interbank, the cedi to the dollar is about 15 cedis. 4.8, 14.8, 15 cedis, depending. The cedi has depreciated year to date in the last 10 months.
Hold on, my colleague. I think we're getting a bit anxious about this. The question was asked whether there was interjection, whether he cross-examined or something. And then we asked our question for clarification. But if it is, he's happy, he says I've come to his age. Now you say that, well, why Solomon, isn't it? That's why I see you laughing, because I'm helping you out. Yeah, I don't think he's under any responsibility to be kind of answering this sort of question. If we ask for clarification, that is fair. But pointedly, during your time, well, for now, he's not a finance minister and he's not under any sense of motion, So let's be conscious about the question that, well, maybe we overruled that one. Yes,
sir. He has answered the question already.
Halfway through it, it's overruled. So.
You don't start a question and in between you truncate me. Listeners will not appreciate the point I was making.
I thought I should overrule it. It's overruled. Yeah. So that answer is expunged. Yes, another person. Thank you. Who else? Yeah.
Chairman, I hear the ranking member list 46 countries which have performed better than Ghana. I want to find out from him whether any of these countries that he listed, their finance minister had to deal with energy sector debts that he inherited when they came into office to manage the affairs of their various countries. I want to know from him whether any of the 46 countries that he's listed had to deal with these huge energy sector debts in those countries.
Some of those countries didn't inherit ESLA, which provided buffer for them to deal with some of the energy sector debt, which ESLA energy sector levy you have even collateralized up to 2035. But Honorable to respond to the other issues.
Mr. Chairman, some of these countries are at war to the level of they have to buy huge ammunitions, and their revenue base has derailed, yet they perform better than Ghana. So, Mr. Chairman, it will be wrong for you to zero in into one item and conclude. If you are to take critical look at these countries, Ghana is far better off than most of these countries that we made reference to in terms of all the economy issues, indicators and everything, yet we performed worse than them. So his argument, Mr. Chairman, I respectfully disagree with him, because we cannot be a country that is performing worse than a war-torn country.
Isn't it also part of a reflection of their economies, I mean, the level of development in their respective countries, isn't it?
But, Mr. Chairman, that is why it is wrong for one person to isolate one expenditure. Under the previous administration, we had to contend with single spine. We did not treat it below the line. We contend with a major expenditure single spine that the previous administration inherited from then President Kufuor's government, yet it was contained and paid for and accounted for appropriately. We had to contend with Dumso. We had to contend with that and did a major investment in doing so. We did not treat it below the line.
Which resulted in what
that did not resolve the issue.
Your Dumso and your plans.
So, Mr. Chairman, even the energy payments.
Otherwise, when the chairman is talking, you wouldn't let me
complete. No, because I'm speaking. You have not asked me to stop.
The chairman has the privilege of
just ask me to stop, and I'll stop.
So stop.
Okay.
When I finish,
Thank you.
Continue. That's right. So I have also stopped. So
he said I used only one example. Let me give him an example. Can he tell us any of these 46 countries that their finance minister had to expend huge sums of money to clean their banking sector? Any one, just one.
I prefer that you put it as a suggestion. That isn't the case that quite a lot of this also went into the cleaning of the medicine.
I'll be guided accordingly, Chairman. Very well. And lastly, Chairman, I'm sure that the ranking member of the Finance Committee is very much familiar with the Public Financial Management Act, Act 921, the proponent of the motion. And if I may refer him to Section 22 of the Public Financial Management Act, because I heard him say that the fiscal management relates to revenue, expenditure, and financing. Okay, I may refer to Section 22, approval of annual budgets by Parliament. 22.1, Parliament shall, by the 31st of December of each financial year, consider and approve A, the annual budget and the correlative work plan of the Government of Ghana for the ensuing financial year. B, the appropriation bill. And C, any other bill that may be required to implement the annual budget. And 22.2, the annual budget approved by Parliament takes effect from the first day of January of the ensuing year. Now, having quoted the provision in the law, I want to find out whether the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana in December of 2021 complied with the provisions of this act? And if the Parliament did not comply, would it not agree with me that the failure of the Parliament of Ghana to comply with the provisions of the law has contributed to the fiscal situation that we find ourselves in as a country? Thank you.
Parliament of Ghana, of which you are a member.
Yes.
Honorable member, with all due respect, I think that the question should be overruled. And I say this because the Constitution clearly entrenches the concept of separation of powers. The executive branch of government has its functions clearly stated in the Constitution. The Minister of Finance exercises management of the financial resources of this country on behalf of the President, who under Article 58 is a receptacle of all executive authority. If that authority results in any situation of mismanagement, in any situation of fiscal recklessness, the executive branch must take the responsibility. In fact, it is not for nothing that the drafters of the Constitution provided in Article 82(4) of the Constitution that ministers can be censured. If we took the logic of your question to its conclusion, then it means that this exercise, what we are doing today, is an exercise in futility, but it is not.
Not entirely. It seems to be suggesting that Parliament may be a contributory factor in all that.
Chairman, we've taken note. If it's indicting Parliament, let it be. We are individual members of Parliament who have shared our view with you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if you permit me, the point that I'm making is this. The provisions of the Public Financial Management Law is clear. Section 22 imposes a duty on Parliament to perform 3 actions by a certain date. Parliament indeed approved the annual budget and correlative work plan of government for 2022.
Honorable member,
but failed to pass the revenue measures.
With all due respect,
implement the budget.
Your question is overruled.
Provision that we all are living witness to.
Please take a cue from the chair. Your question is overruled. The witness is not going to answer that question. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, Hansard is my witness. I've raised this issue of...
The question is overruled.
Okay, thank you.
Please proceed with your evidence.
Mr. Chairman, I will move on. I'll move on to the next item.
Wait. What you say?
There's one last question on the banking sector that I did not answer. So if I can answer that and move on.
Well, which one is it?
No, he raised an issue whether these countries in question, the 46 African countries, had to contend with the banking sector cleanup.
No, I think we resolved that.
It was a question. Chairman, it's important I answer.
I rephrased it, and then he said he was guided by that, and I think we...
So I shouldn't answer?
Well...
It's important to answer.
Answer to that. He says it's fine. Any other questions? Yes, Sammy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Chairman, I will be relying on the special audit conducted by the Auditor General presented to this House last week. Special audit report on the recoveries made from...
We're not going to allow staff to come from the magicians, whatever. That's fiscal. What is this document?
Special audit report. I'm using it to ask a question.
No. Where is it? Where is it on this thing?
It doesn't. It's not been tendered in evidence.
People can be pulling staff from wherever and then be asking questions.
No, Chair. I just want you to know that my question has basis
I didn't think it didn't have basis in
proceeding from a report.
Wait a minute. I think we're getting enough of this. 1, 2, 3, up to 17. I think we added a few more to this. Council, we added 1, so that will be 18. Now he has this freshly minted stuff from wherever it was pulled out from, and he's going to add to that. So if you want to stick to the document that we have here, he actually hasn't referred to this. Ato, did you refer to this particular document? You haven't seen it in your
but Honorable KTM, Honorable Chair,
who would agree to it is fine.
Yes, I think that members are entitled as of right to refer to public documents in order to ask follow-up questions. So he referred to the Joy FM in as a predicate for his question on the reaction of the IMF, and he didn't even tender it. It was not overruled. Council, you were happy with that. You want to object to this one?
Well,
no,
we don't need to put you. We don't need to put you on the spot.
If the question that is about to ask,
Council, hold your breath for a minute. Hold your breath. Put your thing on. Why do you want to put him on the spot? You can ask your question without reference to this, can't you?
So, Chair, am I to understand that moving forward, members cannot ask questions because the Honourable Mesa was the first to introduce a foreign material not on the list.
We are not going to do that again. So
yes.
This is the first casualty of that decision.
I hope Chairman is not being biased and unfair. But the question really can still be asked without that document. The matter relating to fiscal recklessness. Will you classify clear cases of wastage? The Auditor General has just retrieved 2.2 billion from wrong pockets. Will you say that those infractions, irregularities, wastage, malfeasance is part of the fiscal recklessness that you are referring to? I just want to be clear.
I think you have a very important point out there. When we say fiscal recklessness, frivolous expenditures are part of the recklessness. Obviously, wastage in the system is part of the recklessness. And malfeasance, things that can be avoided. Some of the reports, when you read them, you ask yourself what is happening here. So if you have all of this money going down the drain, in the end is the taxpayer who have to pick the liability and pay either through taxes or through other means. So it's part of the problem. Fiscal recklessness, I'm only looking at the high level numbers. How come we have spent so much as a percentage to our GDP or above our tax revenue or total revenue? That, for me, I think is something that we have to immediately flag it if we had known that this is the level of the fiscal deficit that we accumulate. For example, when government had to go through the financial sector cleanup, the way and manner it was done obviously amount to recklessness, because you cannot go to the bond market and borrow Eurobond just to collapse a bank. You don't do that. Because when you use this kind of Eurobond money for this kind of expenditure, when the time comes for payout, you have difficulty in paying out. So when we say fiscal recklessness, it's wastage, is the way and manner the fiscal is accounted for, and the high level of the fiscal. Obviously, if it was high enough and they were aware, they would have taken position to decline. And that is why I made the word fiscal reckless.
Okay, Counsel for the Finance Minister, he has his hand up. Is it in relation to the question?
We just need clarity on the question, because he specifically said the Auditor General has retrieved. So I really want us to understand what he means. How does he situate fiscal recklessness in a situation where he's saying the Auditor General has retrieved? We just want clarity on that.
Okay. Counsel, since you are not part of this process, what I would advise is that you can raise technical legal objections to what is happening, but in terms of asking for substantive clarity of questions that have been asked, you do not have the right before this committee.
I don't understand.
No.
Why can't he?
No, because Honorable Co-Chair, with all due respect, the Honorable Finance Minister will have a turn at this table, and if he does, he will now have the opportunity to make.
He would have to contend with, and if he doesn't understand through his counsel, you mean they couldn't see clarification?
Yes, that is what that's what I'm saying. What? No. What? No. I think we. No counsel has been. No question has been.
I think he's agreed that we can clarify.
Yeah, Chair, I can happily clarify. The Auditor General is reporting that they have set out to retrieve 4.7 billion.
Sorry, which report are you referring to?
4.7 billion. The report you don't want me to refer to.
Well, so why would you refer to a report I don't want you to report?
So we are discussing fiscal recklessness.
Yeah, sure. So and reference to this.
My question, Chair, you know that I can never be intimidated.
I never intend to intimidate the non-tongue maestro. I don't intend to. So make your point without reference to this.
So the question is very clear in my mind. Wastage, malfeasance, financial irregularities. The Auditor General is in pursuit of 4.7 billion. He's retrieved 2.2 billion. 2.5 billion remain out there that he's in search of. And I just wanted to find out if that is part of fiscal recklessness, the fiscal recklessness that you speak of. Does it include malfeasance, corruption, public funds in wrong pockets? That's my question.
Sami, thank you very much. I think it's a fact that if we say fiscal recklessness, it includes all of that. The key question here is, are those recklessness done only at the Ministry of Finance? I do not believe it. I think it is the economy-wide, it's the government-wide, and most ministers of finance are corporate. You can't blame only the minister responsible for finance. But the PFM Act empowers the minister responsible for finance to deal with it, and that is why the PFM Act makes more or less the Minister of Finance the most powerful minister. So he's clothed with all the necessary legal framework to confront his colleagues. So if he fails to do that, obviously he has engaged in fiscal recklessness. And wait a minute. That has to be dealt with.
Wait a minute. So he's not here because he's caused all this mess, but because he hasn't really held those people, he hasn't imprisoned quite a lot of those people responsible. Is that the point you are making?
The fiscal powers are vested in the finance minister.
But effectively being held to account for...
Of course, if the Minister of Roads overspent and the Minister of Finance pays, it is the responsibility of the Minister of Finance, even though the act was committed by the Minister of Roads. Because the PFM Act empowers that only the Minister of Finance that can give the financial clearance for the minister to engage in that act. If the minister fails to do that, the Minister of Finance can deal with him.
It isn't the minister who is responsible for this, it's the whole economy,
it's government-wide.
The gaboodle of it that makes this whole thing what it is.
Well, except that, the Chairman, if you had allowed me to reference that report at page 35, you see that the Ministry of Finance has a 1.6 billion CD question to answer there.
You have another question?
So the Finance Minister is not particularly exonerated
you have another question?
In the matter. Yes, I have another question.
Let me make this point.
I think let's make some progress.
I have not exonerated the Minister of Finance.
Issue. No,
I've said he has all the powers under the PFM Act to confront it when it happens. His failure will mean that he has to carry the cross.
Yeah, my final question, Chair, on the ground 5. The Honourable Ranking Member of Finance made reference to using bonds for the financial sector cleanup. My perspective is quite different. I want to find out, in terms of the policy choices that were available to the finance minister and to the government, the route they chose, was that what was in the national interest so far as our fiscal management of the economy is concerned? The policy choice, that route which cost us, I don't know, the figures keep changing in this house. I don't know if it's 25 billion or whatever it is now. What do you have to say about those policy choices so far as fiscal recklessness is concerned?
Mr. Chairman, I think Honorable Atufosin does not run the finance ministry. For him to be able to answer this policy-related question, I strongly believe that. Yes.
Any views?
Policy choices. We are discussing fiscal recklessness.
Chairman, I have a strong view on the way and manner.
What you did 6 years ago,
the way and manner
the
financial sector cleanup was conducted. I have a strong view on that. The Chairman, countries had to contend with banking sector issues. There have been best practices on how the financial sector cleanup could have been managed. In the UK, they had to go through similar when Royal Bank of Scotland and Lloyds Bank had to be bailed out. In the end, they paid back. Ghana decided to go on a route where the burden on the banking sector cleanup was transferred to the taxpayer. I think that was wrong. I think that Ghana could have decided to go for other ways in dealing with the banking sector issues instead of what they did. That was a wrong policy choice.
Okay, thank you. The Honorable are here for.
Honorable Ato, you said you do not borrow money for banking sector cleanup. How does this amount to recklessness on part of the finance minister?
If I'm the Minister of Finance, there's no way I was going to borrow money to collapse a bank. I wouldn't do that. So that is recklessness.
That is his answer. That's a witness's answer. So, Honorable Senator, do you have a question? Or Honorable Yimadu? Okay.
Let me do my last one, then we decide on the next one. I thought something you were talking about bonds and all the other things. He himself was talking about bonds and other things. That's right. The reason there. Ato, was ever any bonds raised in the year 2015? Harud, why are you laughing? Don't anticipate me. 2015, which raised about $1 billion for the country, $1 billion. Recall that? 2015. Some bonds were raised.
Of course.
2015.
Yes.
You recall that? And it's the case that your interest on it was about 10.75%. Why do you keep on laughing? That's 10.75. Is that it?
Correct.
And it is suggested that it's the most expensive whatever which was ever raised in the country. Is there anything to it?
I disagree.
Okay. But you know what I'm talking about.
I disagree. Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Okay. When there was a World Bank guarantee of 400 million, and then there was the interest payment of 750 million.
That is why I said I disagree.
And you were still having to pay 1 billion, which is all what the finance minister has had to be paying, which is led to the figures that you identified out there. You disagree with everything.
Mr. Chairman, the previous
You disagree with everything, don't
I disagree because the previous
I haven't asked for answer. You disagree with everything.
I'm making a point that this administration
why not
years,
answer my question? You disagree or you don't disagree?
I disagree with you.
Full stop.
I'm giving you further and better particulars.
I'm not interested in your
You
further.
have to need it. You will need it. Because this administration, within a period of 4 years, had borrowed from the Eurobond market in excess of $12 billion. as against the previous administration that borrowed $4 billion US. So we are talking of how reckless it is, and that's why I have to give you those information.
No, it wasn't the quantum. My interest wasn't the quantum. The 1 billion, I wouldn't have thought is so significant in terms of the figures. I'm talking about what you call the coupon rate. You are 7.5% return on that, and all the work back guarantees and all of that. That's what I'm talking about.
So can I explain that?
No, you can't.
It will
answered my question. He said he disagrees.
No, it will be grossly unfair to curtail his answer.
All right.
I think it's important because you are comparing.
I will allow you. Go on. Let me hear you.
Mr. Chairman, bond prices depend on the time of issuance, and there are so many factors that account for bond prices. If you want to compare bond prices, obviously you have to look at the real interest, how much you are paying. For example, recently, government had to issue zero coupon bond. And the question you have to ask yourself, so what is the real interest rate of the real coupon of the zero coupon bond? Simple put, I borrow today, I get paid all my interest, and tomorrow, when the time comes, I will end up paying only the principal. What is the real interest? I think it is more expensive than the 2015 bond, and that is my answer.
And Chairman, just there on the banking sector, the Honorable Atuforsen and the proponents of the motion were strongly arguing that there is an opportunity cost to an expenditure of 23 billion for a banking sector cleanup. If you recall, the Association of Bankers called on Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa at the time and said that some interjection of some liquidity of some amount not exceeding 1 billion, even at the time, and we'll tender it again tomorrow. Daily Graphic reported this in their front page. They said if we got 500 million, you could save a number of these banks. Now, you said no, categorical, that you would not help them with any liquidity intervention. You ended up spending 23 billion in a clean up, where they said that many of them, if they got a certain modicum of support from government, so instead of spending 23 billion, and people have gone home comfortable with people's savings and investment, that must be of concern to you, Chairman, that you refuse to support those who are in need. Don't forget the families who have died as a result of they've been asked to go home because once the bank is not working, mother and child, wife and husband in crisis. So you refuse 500 million, 1 billion to save the life of some of these financial institutions, and you are happily saying that we should celebrate you after spending 23 billion, which you are not prepared to report. That's what he's emphasizing on, because this was below the line. So if you left out banking sector expenditure of 23 billion, who should bear the brunt for it? Same public, same taxpayer. Those are the contradictions we are pointing out to. Thank you.
We'll come back to the banking thing. Let me, for sake of completeness, just recite out the nature of the point I'd have. On a chair.
Yeah, Chair, I raise this point of order, so we will be guided. I thought that the proponents are to make out their case, and we will give an opportunity, fair opportunity, to the Honorable Finance Minister to respond, and that the tenure of the Honorable Atuforsen when he was Deputy Finance Minister is not what is. Yeah, but continuously the questions coming up about bonds he raised, it's as though he is under scrutiny.
Yeah, for example, the question of the bond that I'm raising, not particularly about his tenure of office, about the fact that a particular bond of this nature was raised in the country. It just coincides that was at a time when he was in office. Well, yeah, 2015. So if it happens to be the case that he was in office at that time, so be it. But I'm not putting it to him that he has done anything wrong or anything. I'm asking for clarification. Indeed, I was going to do further clarification. And as the chairman talking, you don't debate with the chairman. Block his light, block the light so that he's not able to speak. Let's just listen. Listen, this is what I was going to say. See, it is here. It is some message for whatever. That's all right. Chairman have some liberties, you know. One of the most outrageous bonds out there must be a $1 billion lent to Ghana in 2015 at 10.75 interest with a 400 million guarantee from the World Bank. A buyer of the bond in 2015 is already guaranteed to get 1.15 billion, and they are still owed 1 billion and 860 million of interest payment. A simple matter of you understand this better than I do. You know about this and whether it makes sense or it doesn't make sense.
Chairman, the person who sent the tweet.
All of you calm down to go on.
The person who sent the tweet did a follow-up tweet the next day, and I thought you can read that one as well. Yes, on the same one. So the same person. This is a tweet.
Funny enough, your uncle's glasses sees just one point; it doesn't see the other one. You know. So yes. So what's your comment on this one?
My answer is that there's a follow-up tweet by the same person.
I'll have a look.
And if you can read it, it will clarify your position.
I'll try and then read.
Yes.
Very well, Honorable Ahienfo, you have your hand up.
Chairman, co-chairman. My issue is that what is good for Peter is good for Paul.
That's not always true. That is not always true. It's not always true.
Asked a question based on 2016 exchange rate figures as compared to the exchange rate now. Chairman overruled this particular question. So I least expect my chairman to go contrary to his own rules.
We don't play by the same rules. The chairman have their own rules and the members have their own rules.
Yes, the rules are the same. So, Chairman, expunge that from your own record.
Counsel, are you that brave? Go on,
to actually buttress his point, the reference that Okudzoto-Ablakwa was making in the auditor's report.
Blocked by chairman.
Blocked by chairman. I believe that if we're to do our job properly and members of parliament are asking questions and making reference to documents that are within the public domain, they should be permitted.
When we get to the floor, he would have it. I'll keep it till we get to the floor.
Chairman, on the official records, it must show that the reference that he made to the document, because you're making reference to something we don't know. You said chairmen are allowed.
Yeah, sure.
Honorable Japa also made mention to something online. This is a document that is an official document.
I appreciate the point you're making. Consistently, lawyers of the finance minister are complaining that, you see, originally when they came, we almost aborted this, and the sanity broke out. And we decided to go the way we are going. They were saying that we should restrict them to the particular documentation which you were going to buttress the charges that you had made. Which for me made a lot of sense, but in the end it looked like it was getting a bit difficult. So we decided that we weren't going to allow all of us open rein to just rein in this, bring this document, bring document. We listed about 17 of the documents. Suddenly he puts
Chairman, that is for the proponents of the motion. But if members are questioning certain things and can make reference to documents,
when we come back to do the other ones, I'll give you the document and you can raise it.
You must indicate whether it's being allowed or not, because for the record, the counsel of the minister raised the question about where the document, the information Sami was referring to was from, and it's from a document that you are refusing to allow as evidence.
I'm not changing my mind on this one. So let's see what we do.
With all due respect, co-chairman,
Chairman, don't get involved in this, co-chairman. Don't get involved. Let us deal with this.
I think it's
we almost completed with the 5. We are 6. We are 6 and 7. Let's make a decision on
honorable members. We may have to take a vote on the issue whether and the extent to which we can rely on public documents. You know, well, let's see how
your license, the license.
Okay, the Honorable Haruna Iddrisu, you have your hand up.
Chairman, I wanted to do a quick one on 3, and it's on item 3. Because
we're going back to 3.
Yes.
We're wondering what to do with the 6 and 7.
No, he will conclude on that. 3 is very straightforward. I'll deal with it. Illegal payment of oil revenues into offshore accounts in flagrant violation of Article 176 of the 1992 Constitution.
Why do you think that's going to be fairly short? Let's decide on what to do.
I'm the one giving the evidence, and I'm assuring you that it's a short
bear with us. There's this suggestion that we may want to go for a break or whatever. We have thought that. Wait a minute. We have thought that the only items outstanding were the 6 and 7. If you add that one to it, we're going to have 3 more items. What is
that one? There is $600 million.
Sorry?
Standing in Jubilee Holding, which was not paid into
we
the
can do 20 minutes for the remaining
against Section 3 of the PRM.
See, I'm talking and he's not listening and he's going on and on and on and on and on. The 3 and then the other ones. Yes.
The Honorable Atuforsen, are you suggesting that you can do the 3 and the remaining ones in 20 minutes? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I indicated that
what's the problem?
My job is to take you through item 4, 5, 6, and 7. So far, I've done 4 and 5, 6 and 7. I can lump them together.
We are hearing medical conditions why people should have break. So let's take a decision. He says it's now. He says it's going. Yeah, he says it's going. Yeah. So what do we do? Is it a sense of the committee that we break for 1 hour and come back at 4 o'clock? Sorry, let's get it right. I can see through.
No.
2 hours.
No, 1 hour is okay. Honorable Minority Leader, I crave your indulgence. 1 hour. 1
hour.
Was
saying that we could finish it in 20 minutes, yes, but there are those who said that they need to get break.
Yes. Very well, very well. Thank you very much. Council,
4 o'clock.
We crave your indulgence. At 4 o'clock, the committee will resume sitting. So, honorable members, the committee will adjourn for 1 hour and to return at 4 o'clock p.m. in the forenoon.
And this is our continuous coverage of the probing of the censure motion against the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. You've been watching Dr. Atuforsen lead evidence for the minority. Atuforsen has been relying on the Fiscal Responsibility Act, and he makes his argument that our debt is unsustainable. He relies on the same act and says the primary balance, for instance, must always be balanced, and a breach of which can lead to motion of censure as the minority has done. Atuforson says that the country is suffering from the consequence of excessive government borrowing, and Haruna Idrisu, who is the minority leader, has been supporting him. He first objected to the way the committee is conducting its business, and then he came back to support the call by the minority or the demand for reasons for the change in method of the finance minister in reporting to the House. Now, on ground 5 of their motion, Atuforson, who is the ranking member on the Finance Committee, explained that government lost it all on the fiscal outlook. The minority is blaming the Finance Minister for contributing to first the depreciation of the cedi through fiscal recklessness. And how does it describe the fiscal recklessness? It talks about spending on the National Cathedral. It talks about chartered jets, which also the ranking member, Atuforson, says contributed to the recklessness. He says, we are the worst performing countries in our fiscal budget in the last 4 years. And indeed, he made comparison to 46 countries, which he says Ghana is the worst performing country. Now, Gabi Otredakun, who is representing the finance minister at the event, he says he has been raising issues with how the minority is now being asked to tender in more documents, which he thinks they should have brought at the first probing. Now, this is Ejapa Mensah, who is questioning whether the 46 countries that Atuforson used in ranking Ghana as the worst performing had energy sector debt to deal with. And this actually generated an answer from the minority leader, who says that those countries also did not have ESLA, which the government of Ghana had. So there's been a banter between the minority, and especially with one of the chairmen, who is Katie Hammond, MP for Adansi Asaka. Of course, his co-chairman is Dr. Ayene, who is former Attorney General. They've been chairing this committee. The committee has currently taken a break, and they'll be returning in an hour's time, which is 4 p.m. My colleague, Blessed Soga, will take over from me, and we'll be bringing you every bit of this probing in Parliament. Stay tuned to Joy News.